And I think we can get started now. I'd like to bring our attention over to Mr. Mike Mignola.
Speaking of Mike phobic.
Mike phobic. Mike has become one of the most beloved and respected creators in comics. He's worked on such titles as Superman, Batman, Rocket Raccoon. He has storyboarded the Atlantis movie for Disney.
Not true.
Oh, no?
No.
Oh, well, you'll have to correct us on that, if that keeps coming up. And Coppola's Dracula? Is that
Nope,
one
not true.
That one's not true.
I worked on it, but I didn't storyboard it.
Oh, okay. And he's, of course, most well known for the creator and driving influence behind the Hellboy franchise.
That's true. I'll take that.
So 1 out of 3 at least. So without any further ado, I'd like to turn this over to Mr. Mignola.
And I want to turn it straight over to questions because I have no prepared material. So I just want to, answer whatever you guys want to ask. So first question.
Hands? Anyone? Joker. Speak up.
Thank you. I had not heard that about Dracula. What was your involvement? I'm a big fan of that movie, so plenty of things I'd rather ask you, but this is new to me. So.
Yeah, it's funny because my involvement in the Dracula film has been widely exaggerated by everybody but me. Because I'm not, unlike a lot of Hollywood guys, I'm terrible at padding my resume. So I was drawing the comic book adaptation of the film. And I moved to San Francisco, so I was actually right around the corner from Zoetrope Pictures, Francis's offices. So I used to go up there to pick up photo reference. And because I was around the corner, there was a model that Francis wasn't happy with, so they called me to come in and do some drawings for like changes to make on the model. And I did a couple little tiny things like that. There's a castle that appears in the film for like a millisecond. Well, the Dracula castle when it wasn't in ruins. And I did part of the design for that castle, so almost nothing. But then I did get a call towards the end. Well, I got a really weird call where they were going to change the end of the movie, and they were asking if I had any ideas for how to do the ending. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm just drawing the comic. I'm not supposed to be working on the movie. I'm not supposed to be making changes in the movie. So towards the end, I got a phone call, from someone up at Coppola's office saying, "Well, you've been helping us out. You want to come up and watch a rough cut of the picture?" Well, that's cool. And I'm thinking it's going to be half a dozen guys and a couple boxes of pizza. Oh, yeah, come up early. There'll be some food. Here's like the #1 most surreal experience I've ever had. I walk down, I show up at the offices. They say, well, go on downstairs. I go downstairs, and there's a table set for 3 people, and it's Francis, George Lucas, and I'm looking at the third spot going, holy shit, is Steven Spielberg here? And then you go, oh, wait a minute, that's for me? So I watched a rough cut, I did it with those guys and watched a rough cut of the picture, and then George and I argued about scenes that George thought should be added to the film. So it was really a really weird evening. And then the next day it actually got weirder because I get home and I'm thinking, I just had dinner with Francis Ford Coppola. And there's a documentary about the making of Apocalypse Now called Heart of Darkness. And I happen to have a copy, so I threw it in, and I'm watching him make Apocalypse Now. And the phone rings. And I pick up the phone, and now I've never talked to Francis on the phone. I've gotten his assistant or his son, but it's Francis. So I've turned the sound off on the TV, and he's talking to me about storyboarding a couple sequences that we had talked about the night before. So while I'm watching him make Apocalypse Now, I'm pitching him ideas for how to do certain scenes. I mean, it wasn't my idea to pitch. He's like, well, how would you think to do this or this? Not that he needed my help. But the really cool thing about Francis is, he's a really creative guy, and he's not such an egomaniac that he just goes in and says, this is how to do it. He's actually asking your opinion and listening to your opinion. So that was wild. And then I said, well, at the time I'd never done storyboards. So he said, well, don't draw them like storyboards, just draw comic book pages. So I drew 4 or 5 comic book pages to, represent certain scenes. And it was so near the end, so near when the movie was supposed to come out. I never thought they'd actually film these scenes. But sure enough, there's a couple scenes in there that are, at least one that's exactly the way I drew it. So that was pretty cool. That was pretty weird. So again, a very, very brief experience, but a really wild one. The guy right in front of you, he's got his hand kind of up.
I heard you're doing some of the designs for the new Hobbit movie, and I was just wondering what it's like adapting or making art from such a classic title. Is it fun, or is it like overwhelming, or?
It's really interesting that this is the first panel I've done where I've done plenty of panels where the first questions are about film, but it's the first question where the first panel where the first question hasn't been about any kind of Hellboy stuff. And not, and it's fine. It's fine. I'm just saying it's really funny, and I'm happy to talk about it. I worked on The Hobbit very, very briefly, and 10 days. It feels like I spent more time in the plane getting to New Zealand and coming back than I spent on the ground in New Zealand. But my involvement in film, for the most part, doesn't relate to the book. I'm there to do, my role at least, was to do what Guillermo del Toro was asking me to do. So it wasn't like he threw me the book and said, here, figure out what this stuff would look like. Del Toro usually has a pretty clear idea what he wants things to look like. So, I can't really go into what I worked on. Nothing really fancy, nothing really, I didn't do Smog. Okay, oh, he must be doing the dragon. There's a billion other guys doing that. It in a way, it didn't really have anything to do with the book. I did skim through some of the book while I was there, because I hadn't read it in a million years. But for the most part, my job on the film stuff is to work with the director.
Hello.
Hello.
I've been a fan of yours for years. The Hellboy was a big part of my awkward adolescent years. And there's one thing, though, I've never been quite clear on. How do you pronounce your last name?
When I went to Italy, that was the first question they asked me, because they wanted to hear the American mispronounce his own name. It's Mignola. That was an easy one.
Thank you. Hi. How do you feel about a movie with Lobster Johnson?
That'd be great.
Yeah, because he's one of my favorites.
Yeah, sadly I wouldn't hold my breath.
No.
But Guillermo did want to put Lobster Johnson into the second Hellboy picture. When it turned out that the Johan character was going to be really expensive to do, and the mask thing that Del Toro had figured out would probably kill the guy inside, he did ask me, could we swap Johan out for Lobster Johnson? And I said, the problem is they're radically different characters. You can't just, it's kind of like making a Superman movie and going, this isn't work, the flying isn't working, so let's just put Batman in it. It's like, well, Batman, you don't shoot him out of a rocket from Krypton, it's a different character. So that was the one place where I said, no, it just doesn't make any sense. Cost-wise, it makes sense, but let's not. He has said at various times, if there was a third film, he'd find a way to put Lobster Johnson in it. But if you add up all the things Guillermo said would be in Hellboy 3, it's like a 360-hour movie. Basically everything that doesn't fit anyplace else, it'll be in Hellboy 3. I wouldn't. And the third animated film was supposed to have Lobster Johnson, but they pulled the plug. So, there you go. Maybe someday, who knows?
Yeah.
All right.